Well, hello again, everybody. Welcome to Solutions with Aquarius Rising Africa. I'm always so excited when I come on the show because I've always just got such cool guests. I can't wait to get you guys just hear what we have to say. So welcome to Solutions with Aquarius Rising Africa again. And I've got with me my gorgeous friend, Andi again, who you would, if you guys have watched our previous interviews on Aquarius Rising Africa, she has done 2 interviews with me in the last 2 weeks or so. She's also a overcomer of this horrific system that is currently being uprooted, and a beautiful, 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 strong, vibrant soul. And I'm just very happy to welcome you back, Andi, on our Solutions channel. And today we're going to be talking about infiltration into the Eastern philosophies and the Eastern teachings. I'm so excited about that because, as we know by now, there's an equal opposite to everything. So, you know, as long as there's one side, there's the other side as well. And I think the dark energies have really just focused on one side of that. And Andi has been on this incredible journey over the past few years on her healing path and just discovered magic. But I'm going to hand you over to her. So, but maybe you can just fill us and our viewers on Solutions, just a little bit about your beginnings, what you went through, and how your healing journey began. I'd love to hear about that.
Okay. Thank you so much, Chantel. I'm really honored to be on this channel and excited to talk about the things that we're going to talk about. So I am a survivor of SRA and military programs that started at a very young age. When I was in elementary school, my main handler was actually the elementary school music teacher. But there was a ring of very high level elites operating in the local area where I grew up. And I, at some point, I'll be talking a little bit more about that, but there were some very, very high level people involved in the local rituals and Masonic rings and things like that. So, yeah, I've been speaking out about it for the last couple of years now. The first interview that I gave, I used an alias, and it was on a channel called Blessed to Teach, and I did an interview with Gene Decode. And then I've since, you know, met some really incredible people in the movement like yourself, Chantel, and I'm just really grateful and honored to be able to start to shed light on so many different dark corners.
Absolutely. Yeah. Well, I'm so grateful to have connected with you as well, because I know when we were doing a chat on, I think it was with Jesse, maybe a week or 2 ago as well, that's when we connected just after that. And you shared with me that you've studied, amongst other things, Sanskrit. And I remember when I read that, every cell in my body started tingling. And I was just so excited to connect with you because you have made it your mission since then. When I say then, I would imagine coming out of the system and then to discover the true, authentic healers and teachers of the world. And we've spent some time off air talking about these things, and I am in awe. I've got to tell you, I am in awe of what you've achieved and what you've done. So I am dying to share with our audience some of that because, you know, even though, as I was saying earlier, you know, I really respect every denomination. I respect how every person wants to worship and how they choose to worship, you know, as long as, in my opinion, there's no harm involved. But there's always rumblings that the Eastern teachings are evil and evil and evil and evil. And, you know, I'm a great advocate saying, no, you know, as with Christianity, as they've inverted the Christian cross, so have they done that with each and every one of the teachings. So we want to talk about that as well and shed some light on that, because I think that's so important to realize. People aren't wrong when they see that. Let me rephrase that. They are not all wrong when they see that, because part of what you're seeing is true. Most definitely. It's like what we're seeing happens in the churches as well. Maybe not to that extent, I don't know. But there's definitely that element of it. And some very high level people, such as the Dalai Lama, we know, has been compromised as well. We know that. So looking at all of that, I'm just really excited for you to unfold and uncover. But I'd like to know, how old were you when you finally got out of this hideous system, and how did you get out, and how did this journey of your healing begin?
I think that that's an interesting question to answer. From what I can tell, going backward and retracing, the last time I was really targeted and used for experiments and things like that was in college, at the university that I attended. I started out studying aerospace engineering and astrophysics. And I can recall, let's just say, some dark shenanigans happening for an entire semester that I was at the university. And then ever since then, I also track certain interesting people that have come into my life, or interesting jobs that have happened, where I feel like they've been trying to pull me back in as much as possible. But I will say that, let's say, it was a process of healing from the trauma. So it was like freeing up. I would say the best way to explain it is going from enslavement to sovereignty it's a process. And I had to free myself little by little by little, to where I now feel complete, like I own my soul 100% outright, but it was almost like there were pieces that would show up in the form of depression and anxiety and stuff like that, that until I really got down to the root of the trauma, I don't know that, and actually started the healing process. It's almost like I wasn't fully free until I had really reclaimed my soul. But I will say that the last recollection that I have being utilized within the system is in college, at the university. Yeah.
A lot of the survivors and overcomers, they don't have memory or any knowledge of anything actually going on until, let's say, in their 20s. Did you also have a memory block? And what was it that triggered your awakening?
Well, for me, it's interesting because throughout my life, I remembered pieces of, it's like pieces of the puzzle, or what I now know are memories. I had this recurring nightmare when I was younger, and I thought it was just a bad dream. But actually, no, now that I've figured out what that scene was in that recurring nightmare, it was part of a ritual actually connected with the Catholic Church there. And so it's like my awareness has been, pieces here and there, but it would like come, or even memories of things that would come to me, but they didn't make sense on their own. So I would just sort of ignore it, like, oh, that's a weird, what's that? A lot of that all throughout my life. But when I finally was able to connect the dots, I was in my 30s. And the way that it happened was very interesting. I was in a treatment program for 4 months that was really intense for PTSD. And then I followed that up with another program that was sort of a sister program to it, for PTSD as well. And I had incredible therapists, and I was very lucky to find amazing women that were just so divine, so connected to God and to grace. And that really helped me start to unlock some of the deeper stuff that was going on. Because for a while, I had a series of really intense things happen in my life, starting at the age of 19, and actually before, where I thought, I had brain surgeries. I've had 10 surgeries actually for tumors throughout my body in various places. My dad died, my house burnt down, like another house I lived in flooded. It just kept being like thing after thing after thing after thing. And so for a long time, I thought that my PTSD and trauma and all that stuff was just, because of that. And then I started to piece back. It's like the more I healed, the more I was able to remember the whole story. But it's almost like my own brain had sort of protected me until I was strong enough to be able to deal with it. And then when it really came back, I was watching a Netflix movie, and it was about a coach and his female partner that were sexually molesting one of his students. And there was a line in that movie. I don't remember what it is today, but it was a way that he said something to the girl, and the way that he said it and how he said it, and even the words that he said, everything came back and triggered all of a sudden. And I remembered the elementary school teacher. I remembered the rituals. I remembered more and more and more. And it just sort of hit me like a ton of bricks. And for 2 days or so, I was completely nauseated. I had all sorts of like pain and just stuff in my body. But that's how it really finally clicked fully in. So, like I said, it's a process that until I was strong enough within myself to even handle that, I had to heal all of the other things that came first. I was in an abusive marriage, and I left that, and just all the physical, I had chronic physical pain for more than 20 years. And so I had to get to a point where I was strong enough to even deal with it and look at it. And then when it came up and showed itself, and I was able to connect all the dots together more and more. And then I started meeting more. There were actually, the program that I did was in California, and I met quite a few survivors of Hollywood, in the PTSD program that I was in. And so we started to share stories and find similarities. And, I found out that I was not alone, and that this is a whole thing. And I learned a lot of very interesting tidbits about how the system works in Hollywood. So, all of those things kind of combined.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, I'd definitely like to do a show with you on that one day. The Hollywood stuff. That's always very interesting to me, because I think we've been told it's full on CIA, as Tom Althouse calls it, the Alphabet Boys.
Mm-hmm.
But anyway, I find that amazing and incredible. I always say, and just listening to you again, I really marvel at the strength of you, men and women, who've come through the system. And, I've been saying for a long time, you guys are the true healers of the world. So it's such a blessing to sit here and speak with you, because I don't think anyone would have more courage than you overcomers like yourself that have been there, understood the horrors of what you've gone through, faced them head on, and decided to find healing and peace rather than revenge and war, if that makes sense. So I commend you for that. Absolutely. It's always so wonderful to see someone like yourself who has so much grace, in these situations. So then my next question is, so what triggered you, or what was the catalyst? I don't want to use that word triggered. What was the catalyst for you to look into the Eastern teachings? I know that you're a Cherokee, so you obviously have a lot of natural, this beautiful connection to the earth and to God. And so it's natural in you, which is so beautiful. So I would imagine that your spirit would have called you to do very deep core healing and transformation. So you would have been called to look for very deep solutions. So talk us through that. How did that happen? And tell us about that journey.
Well, I grew up, when I was very young, I was introduced to Christianity through my dad and my grandmother, and my mom too, but she grew up Catholic, and so she sort of called herself a recovering Catholic. But my mother is very, very devoted to God. She prays, she's beautiful. It's, her faith has really inspired me in a lot of ways. But my grandmother would read Bible stories, and, we'd go to Bible camp and stuff when we went out to visit her for the summer. And so, and I was baptized Methodist. My mom and dad both grew up in very heavy religious upbringing. My mom in the Catholic Church, and then my dad in the Lutheran Church. And they both were sort of scarred by that in some ways, to where they encouraged my sister and I to go and discover whatever we wanted for ourselves, to discover the truth for ourselves, rather than be sort of so heavily in one of those types of systems. And I'll say that the earliest age that I can remember having these really, really, really deep thoughts about stuff was about 8 years old. And my dad was a genius, really a genius. And he and I would have lots of discussions just all the time about mysteries of the universe and physics and quantum physics and, just all sorts of different beliefs and just anything and everything. He was always learning. He was always very thirsty for knowledge. And so I just was born that way in a lot of ways. I've had kind of a dual obsession with science and God. And what's the truth? What's the truth? And so I would say from that age of 8, or especially around 10, 11, I started to go on my own search. I wanted to find out, what were these other religions around the world? Why were they all arguing? And so, I started learning about Buddhism when I was about 10 or 11, and I studied the life of the Buddha. And then at the same time, I was going to different churches and trying out different denominations and seeing which one I resonated with, and diving as deeply as I possibly could at the time as well into, the Cherokee teachings and the native teachings from all over the place. And then that just continued. So I would read and study anything I could get my hands on about all the different religions around the world. And like I said, try to get to the root of why were they arguing. And so, I sort of learned from a young age to see the world through multiple different lenses, or at least try to understand where different things were coming from. So what I wanted to do was find common ground and figure out, so I was really trying to get to the root. What's the truth? What's the truth? And I always did a lot of research and study of the biblical archaeology and things like that. And, and so I discovered a lot about the Dead Sea Scrolls, and then So I sort of just kept going further back in time. And I was like, well, what happened before that? What happened before that? What happened before that? And I found some very interesting similarities as well between different branches of knowledge and different teachings from across the planet. And so I just have been really on a lifelong quest or the study of these things. And then, my undergrad, I started out, I had a couple of scholarships from like local engineering firms to go into aerospace because I love science. I love it. I love seeing the patterns and because to me, I was always so inspired by, I could only see God in the science, especially when I would start to study, the galaxy or different galaxies, the universe, stars, all kinds of things like that. And to me, I couldn't, I didn't understand even why science and religion were arguing, because the deeper and deeper I would go into the mathematics of creation, the more awe-inspiring it became. And the more,
I want to just chime in at this point. Now, bearing in mind, and I always say especially you targeted bloodline kids, are super smart. There's not one of the survivors that I've come across that are not super smart. And you are clearly a gifted genius. From you, especially when they would have obviously gotten you to do nuclear physics, astrophysics, and aeronautics. Yes. So you obviously have already, and you would have had this thirst for knowledge. And at a young age, you're already trying to satisfy your brain and your mind and your curiosity, I would imagine. So that would have been amazing, an amazing little project for you to go and dig into where this all came from. That's incredible.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I was just thirsty for knowledge and just thirsty for knowledge constantly. Yeah. So anything and everything. And then I try to figure it out, because the other thing that I kept seeing is what we were taught in school versus my experience of reality. And even what we were taught in sort of mainstream physics versus what we were learning in astrophysics courses that especially, the one that I really, it sort of helped me see a lot differently was an entire semester that I studied black holes. And the way that physics breaks down around a black hole according to the mainstream narrative, I was starting to figure out, wait a minute, something is off here. There's something off. And, there is definitely. Let's just say my experience of, let's say, Western academia versus the truth are two very different things. They're very different things. Western academia would give pieces of the truth, but not the whole truth, And so where at first I had a lot of faith in the system of academia. Of course, I went to college and stuff, and I worked really hard and got incredible grades in high school and stuff. I started to see through it. And then my dad passed away, and that was devastating. And so I didn't pursue engineering for a few different reasons. Number one, I saw so many engineers stuck in a cubicle in front of a computer for 40, 50 years, and I didn't want that. And so I ended up graduating with honors with international business and Spanish. Marketing and Spanish, the minor in business, because I figured that if I was bilingual and I had business acumen, I could sort of go into whatever field I wanted. And then I went into the stock market. I worked for a stock market data vendor right out of college that I had interned with. and very quickly saw myself and looked around the office and all the cubicles, and it was like that movie, Office Space. Is it Office Space? That was my life. And I saw people, that had been in that life for 30 years. And so I completely rebelled against it and went back up to the mountains, and I taught skiing, and I was a raft guide. And then I did like weddings and events and stuff at a resort up there. So I've always been sort of bucking the Western system, But in my 20s, I had moved back down to that area it's called the Front Range of Colorado, by Boulder, Colorado. And that's when yoga started to become really popular, and I had never studied yoga or learned anything about it. So of course I'm like, what's this all about? And I started digging in. I just sort of naturally, I still to this day, I don't really go to yoga classes. I prefer more like martial arts type of things. But I was very interested to find out where yoga came from and what the teachings were, because I had always been very, everything that I had learned about India and sort of, it was very awe-inspiring to me always. And so there was a sort of synchronistic thing that happened, that after I graduated college, there was a local school that was teaching Vedic sciences and offering basically master's courses in Vedic sciences. And it was a series of sort of synchronistic things that I got connected with these two teachers that were teaching the Vedic knowledge from a really authentic, according to the way it was taught in ancient days. And when I discovered that knowledge, wow, because it was such a combination of spiritual truths and science connected together. And so my first, so I started a like 4-year program of study of Vedic sciences, and we studied meditation, we studied Sanskrit, and then we studied the whole mathematics, quantum physics, their way of understanding the cosmos. I studied that as well. And what I found was this knowledge that came from ancient India. I had never even heard the word Vedic. I'd only seen like yoga ladies wearing their Lululemon pants or whatever and doing gymnastics kind of. And so I wanted to like get to the root of the knowledge. And when I started studying. And the way that it's been along my journey, it's like when the student is ready, the teacher appears kind of thing. But it's also been these incredible synchronicities and blessings. So I've always used the example that as darkness I've experienced, I've also experienced direct miraculous happenings. Like it has balanced itself out. And also my yearning and seeking for God and for truth, that's what kept me alive. I couldn't do it there's no way I would be here without God, without grace. And I wanted to understand, like, what is this? Because I had direct experiences of feeling the presence of God with me even in the darkest time. So it's not I don't care what someone says about like, oh, I believe this or I believe that. I knew because it's an experience of it, It's kind of like the difference between someone who has done a lot of study about the Amazon rainforest, and they've read all the books about it and think they're an expert, but you spend 3 months in the jungle, that's a whole different thing.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And so when I discovered this knowledge that is very, I'll say, I've been also on this mission, even in my mind from a young age, to find authentic teachers of truth. So it led me across the planet, literally. And it was challenging in these days and ages. It really was. Like, one of the reasons that I didn't stay within the organized Christian religion either, because I don't know, I ran into a lot of darkness there as well. And so I wanted to figure out, well, I mean, I guess the example that the question that I kept asking myself was, okay, what about before Christianity? God was there. Like, what if there's someone across the planet that has never heard of Jesus? Do you think God abandons them? Like, I just can't see that happening. Like, so I wanted to know how God shows up in people's lives in different ways. That's that's what I've been seeking, really. When I discovered this knowledge, the knowledge of the Vedas, the civilization that utilized this science, and it's a science, it's not a religion, comes from approximately 20,000 to 50,000 BC.
Wow.
And one of the things that I discovered too when I started studying it was that it really correlated a lot with the Cherokee teachings. And the Cherokee teachings just really are like parallels, using different languages, kind of like when I was talking to a Tai Chi master, he used to say that his teacher would look at the different traditions around the world. He said, it's like looking in a room through different windows. You're looking at the same thing, but it's a completely different view,
Yeah.
And so that's how I would approach, I guess, my understanding or study of all of these various things. And when the other thing that I loved is that when I started studying more and more about the authentic teachings from India, and like the authentic Cherokee teachings, they really are about being in harmony with God's laws of nature, and how those laws of nature operate, and how we're meant to there's the physics of them, the science of them, even down to the Vedas explain it literally the same way that quantum physics explains the whole aspect of creation, as the knowledge that on the most subtle level, quantum physics, that's a big word, but it just means studying things that are inside, like with the really small stuff, like what's inside of an atom, what actually are the building blocks of this reality that we live in. And the way that the Vedas explained it was that that this whole creation is made of light and sound vibrating in different patterns. And so when I went back and I looked, the one that has, first of all, there's very little knowledge of the Vedic knowledge over in the West. I mean, there just really isn't. There's only a couple teachers of Sanskrit that have a real understanding, or even teach according to anything remotely resembling the traditional ways of teaching. And so I ended up going and studying with various monks and things literally across the world, because it's just really it's very, very, very rare and hard to find in the US. Like you really have to dig.
Yeah,
But
absolutely. We also
you know,
know, I mean, sorry to chime in here, Andy, but just speaking about that, we understand, as well from also my knowledge from Eastern experience, if you will. Just like with every other culture or religion, rather, or faith, there's always those that are corrupt. I mean, we have found a lot of, I mean, I can tell you stories about my Swami in India. I weren't there. But, what I'm saying is there's always going to be man or humanity. There's always some human or the other that tends to corrupt the knowledge or hide it or whatever. So what I'm hearing here is that just like the Catholic Church or the Vatican has hidden so much knowledge from us, the Western world, so to speak. What you're saying is that that there's also been stuff from the East that has been hidden or not exposed fully. Is that what you're saying?
absolutely, 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 absolutely. Yes. So, yes, 1,000%. It's been a very interesting journey because when I went to learn about the authentic teachings of Vedic knowledge, I did not find it in yoga studios in the West. Let's just put it that way. Okay. No. And so this might upset some people, but not all, but there definitely is a major Luciferian influence in what we see as yoga in the West. Definitely.
I agree. I absolutely agree. I'm definitely a yoga enthusiast. Did my yoga training in India as well. And I fully agree, Andy. There is so much information, and it just makes such sense because when you say to me that there's also been information being withheld from the ancient yogic teachings, because if we go back to the ancient teachings, it was predominantly done by men, right? And the yogis, and I know there were women, but predominantly men. And this knowledge was passed on to men, if I'm not mistaken. But I know I'd love you to clarify that though. But also not all the knowledge. So like the Catholic Church or that has hidden certain stuff from us. So the Eastern teachings as well, with all the beautiful teachings of the yoga, and anyone who studied yoga knows, I mean, you study the 8 limbs of yoga, it's beautiful, they're beautiful teachings, but incomplete, is that what you're saying?
Very incomplete, very, very incomplete. So
explain, I'd love to hear, I know this can take 10 discussions and we're going to make it more than one if we need to.
Yeah, there's so many. Yeah, it's very okay. So first of all, okay. Well, I want to first explain a little bit about the Vedas just for like 1 minute, and then talk about how it's been infiltrated and things like that, and how it's so incomplete. But when I went and I actually studied what the knowledge itself was, first and foremost, the entire technology that underlies all of the Vedic knowledge is the language of Sanskrit. And the language of Sanskrit is not a language. I mean, it's a language, but it's way more than a language. It's an actual technology. And the people that run our government know this very well. NASA uses Sanskrit to code. That's how, yeah.
Okay, hang on. Explain that to me. I'm a layman. NASA uses Sanskrit to code. Okay, and I want to just explain also to our viewers, Sanskrit is said to be the most ancient sacred language that began on the planet, okay? I will definitely, that resonates with me. It is a fantastic, beautiful, wow, such a beautiful, just beautiful. In its purity, it's absolutely beautiful, and everything that goes along with it as well. So now here is such a beautiful, sacred language that is really pure in its essence. Now we understand that the Luciferians will take which is already there, pure and good and amazing, and literally invert everything to use for their nefarious purposes. So I would love to know how they actually did that with Sanskrit. And secondly, in order for them to do that, they would have had to have corrupted some of the original leaders, right? And hauled them in so that they could get the knowledge, because someone would have had to give NASA that knowledge, someone ancient, someone sacred, right?
Mm-hmm. Well, okay, so there's a lot of different things to the thing. So first of all, you know, when the knowledge was very pure and the society was run based off of these principles, or you know, the actual technology of the knowledge, was thousands and thousands of years ago. So since then, it's been sort of a slow corruption of it, or you know, fragmenting of it as well. But one of the things was when Alexander the Great invaded India, when the British invaded India, one of the first things they did is they went and destroyed every book that they could possibly find on Vedic knowledge, and you know, burned it. The thing is that I heard stories from lots of swamis or teachers or things, or different, you know, lineage from India, is because it was more of a way of life, just like the Cherokee ways of being are a way of life, that you live in harmony with the land, and you live in harmony with other people, you live in harmony with the animals, you understand how the laws of nature actually work. You know, a lot of and a lot is built into the songs and the prayers and the oral. It's an oral tradition for that purpose, because there was so much just ingrained into the culture and the way of life that I don't care how many books you burn, you're not going to get. They weren't able to ever get rid of it completely, because it carries on with people and with, you know, it's a way of life that's in harmony with creation, you know. And in our what, so that one of the things is they would okay, so then now, for fast forward to like the 1900s and before that even, what started to happen is that those teachings became more corrupted and more infiltrated over the millennia, basically. And actually, the Vedic sciences, the Vedic teaching, Sanskrit, there is no word for religion in Sanskrit. There's no word for religion. So the knowledge at the base, you know, it's a technology. It's literally just observing how things flow in nature and how it all works together, and then studying different layers of consciousness, studying different emotional states and how that impacts the body, mind, and spirit. There's no religion there in the actual science. It's not a religion. There are religions that have been spun from the knowledge. Buddhism, Hinduism, others have come from this sort of root knowledge. But you see examples where, you know, Buddhism basically well, I don't want to go into that whole thing, but they'll take pieces of it and sort of create a whole religion out of it, or another one would create a whole religion out of this one. But
like the churches, right? It
like
sounds
what?
exactly like the churches. It sounds just like what the churches have done with Christianity. There's so many different aspects of it. Same with Buddhism, right? Wow.
Yeah, exactly. So that's one way, is just fragment it all, you know, and confuse, and then you've got different branches arguing. But then also, you know, the British takeover of India had a big impact, to where they really started to well, culturally, make everything very corrupt or very anti these sort of ancient ways of being, peaceful, very peaceful ways of being, because of the westernization, you know. The other thing too that they did very purposefully in India with this knowledge is that you, in order to even hear about these teachings, to even hear about the fact, so let me explain the technology of Sanskrit. I'll just give a quick breakdown of it. Quantum physics, like I said, it's the study of things on a small scale. When you break apart an atom, there's nothing solid. It's strings of energy vibrating at different strings of light and sound, and what appears to be consciousness vibrating in different patterns. Literally, if you listen, everything in nature has on its most subtle level a specific sound pattern that correlates to that thing. The word in Sanskrit replicates that exact pattern. So it's like the song of the thing. So it's not a label, you know, it's the actual pattern that underlies whatever that is. So if you can sort of start to grasp how powerful that is, that if you pronounce the word of, you know, in Sanskrit for compassion, for example, you're not just labeling it, you're creating that actual frequency into being, you know. Absolutely. And so it's very powerful knowledge. The other piece is that in our physical body, God designed us in a way that our nervous system and physical body literally sings. Okay. What I mean by that is there are sounds that literally correspond to different parts of our body. Okay. The one that I like to use, the best example, is the heart. There's a sound in Sanskrit. It's not just a Sanskrit, but you're correct in saying that Sanskrit is the ancient, Sanskrit's the mother of, you know, the Latin languages. So it's a science that corresponds to our physical body, and that each there are points in the body called marma points, or you may have seen like acupressure points. They literally each have a sound that corresponds to them. The sound in the heart is ooh. If you make the sound ooh, the letter U is pronounced ooh in Sanskrit, ooh. Also, like Spanish, it's pronounced ooh. Make that sound, it's right here.
It's very relaxing. Ooh. Come, guys.
Correct.
Let's ooh.
Ooh. Yeah.
Ooh.
So when you start to when you study this, you realize that these sounds that can be connected in patterns can literally rewire the nervous system.
Absolutely.
It's not a quick fix like the Western system where give me a pill and, you know, no, it's through like creating patterns in your body of breath that correspond to well-being. It literally rewires your nervous system. It takes practice, it takes dedication, you know, and it's a slow process of like a natural process of awakening the heart, of understanding certain things, you know. It takes a lot of time. It's very organically, naturally meant to unfold, but it's like the best way that I can explain it is like if it's a process that you go through to open the heart and then open the mind to certain things, and then connect the whole system together. It's like the Luciferians have, number one, they don't want the public to have any sort of knowledge that's really empowering to themselves. Why? Because then they're no longer dependent on their systems. If you can learn how to
which
heal,
is why the medical big pharma is so powerful, because that whole industry has taken our power away. And I'm so grateful that we're having this conversation, because I'm hearing from you that just as, I mean, and obviously in our community, yeah, there's a lot of talk about the missing books of the Bible and what the Vatican has hidden from us and blah, 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 and all the corruption in the churches and all those denominations. It's really good to understand as well that they've done exactly the same thing with the East, the powerful Eastern teachings that give us some of the knowledge. And that's what they're doing with the yoga teachings. And I have someone on here, and I really just want to address this, please. I actually put her in timeout, speaking about saying that she hopes Bryce is watching this because of what you're saying about yoga. Let's be very clear. Andi is not saying yoga is evil. Let's be very clear about that. What Andi is saying is that the yoga community has also been infiltrated. And there are certain aspects of the community that have also been bought or corrupted by the cabal and have been infiltrated, yes, just like the church. Mm-hmm. So there are still certain sects of the Eastern teachings that, like the true teachings of Christ, okay, that are pure and true. Mm-hmm. There's also that from, and I call it the Eastern teachings. I don't know, Andi, if there's a better example to use it. So it really is a better word to use for that. But it's happening all over. The Eastern communities were also infiltrated by the controllers, also withheld a lot of the beautiful knowledge that completes the puzzle. So also, like in Christianity, there have been certain bits of the puzzle that were given to the Eastern faith and have also been used only in bits and pieces in order for them to infiltrate. So this is where we all have to practice discernment. This is what I'm seeing here, is that people haven't necessarily been wrong when they say that yoga is evil. Let me just make that clear. Certain aspects or certain elements have been infiltrated, not everything. As with everything.
It's true. I mean, it's like what, there's that whole thing in the whole Christian community too, about like certain Christians, if they follow this religion or that religion, aren't true Christians. And, there's like that whole, it's very similar, the infiltration that I've seen. But one of the reasons, one of the ways that they have kept sort of the more, let's say, empowering knowledge, like I said, the way, like learning how to make certain sounds that can help you rewire your nervous system, for example. Why do you think they've attacked the music industry, or why is the music industry so heavily infiltrated? Because they understand the subtle patterns that you hear, those affect you mind, body, spirit, physically, mentally, emotionally. And if you listen to some of that trap music that's coming out, it sounds almost demonic. It sounds, and I would bet that they have an understanding of this, of the technology, of the vibrations that underlie creation, and they're pumping out the more negative ones as much as possible. Because when you understand like the cycles of life, we go through cycles, we go through seasons. It's almost like the Luciferians want to take the dark, the part of the cycle that is the destruction part, and like magnify it. But the other thing is, and they keep only the empowering stuff. They keep the real good, like, think of it, if you go and you find gold, they keep that for themselves, but then they give other stuff to the public in order to get only what they want the public to know. So one way that they did that in India was through this patriarchal way of, to even learn some of the things that I'm talking about, Sanskrit, or the actual technology that underlies Sanskrit, in it being a vibrational light, it's a vibrational technology. You had to be male, you had to be Indian, and you had to be born into a certain caste of Brahmins. So not even all male Indians were privy to this information. They said only the kings and the priests are fit to learn this. And so, and for sure not women, for sure not women. However, a few things have happened well, a few women, one of them is a saint from South India. The lineage of knowledge that I have studied is called the Shankaracharya tradition in India, and it traces all the way back to ancient India. And in the like 40s, there was a 40s, 50s, 60s, I can't remember. There was a big shakeup in India of this tradition. And previous to that, there were 4 seats of knowledge of the Shankaracharya tradition in India: the north, the south, the east, and the west seat. And a lot of, well, anyway, this female saint woman was born into a family from the southern seat, the southern Shankaracharya tradition. And so she grew up learning all the knowledge, you know, but then they said that because she was a woman, she wasn't allowed to teach it. And she revolted against it and said, screw you, I'm teaching it anyway. And the thing that really made him mad was she took on some female students from the West. So that really caused a big shakeup.
Because they didn't want the women in the West, they didn't want anyone in the West getting this knowledge, right?
No. In fact, like even some of the lineages of yoga that we see today, like Iyengar, for example, he is a Brahmin. He learned all of this knowledge. However, it was understood, like he's literally was not allowed to bring out certain pieces of knowledge to the public. So and here's how I'll explain it. Traditionally in India, yoga, what you see as yoga in the West is it's not yoga. It's not anything like yoga in India at all. It really isn't. And also in India, there's so much love and reverence for Jesus. When I was over there studying with monks and traveling, there's so much love and respect for Jesus and the Bible, and it's very interesting. I kept hearing stories about legends of Jesus actually being in India during his life and studying some of the Vedic knowledge, which it wouldn't surprise me. Of course I can't, I'm just saying I heard that many times when I was traveling. In 2007 or 2017, I was in India, Thailand, and Bali over a 7-month period, traveling and trying to meet any of the sort of authentic teachers of truth or healers, medicine men, anyone that I could possibly find. So, you know, different monks from different lineages and things I've studied with. But so my teacher of Sanskrit, she has a PhD, and she received knowledge from this saint that like broke out of that whole way of being, and like broke all the rules because he said. And then another thing happened when she was applying for grants. So she received her PhD at a school in California, and then she received a grant to go study with a traditional teacher in India. And she sent out hundreds and hundreds of letters, but no one would take her because she's a Western woman. Like, are you kidding? No. And then there's this really prominent Sanskrit teacher in India that finally accepted her. And he said he had this dream that the knowledge of the Vedas, if it had been kept in the hands of women, wouldn't have been lost. And that he said I had this dream of like oceans of ladies singing, like, you know, together in like a healing way. And so that's why he taught her. So another sort of like miraculous occurrence for some of the knowledge to be passed. And I think God does that. God does that. There's always a way that he's going to preserve authentic things that are empowering to us.
Absolutely. Can never be destroyed, can never be lost. That's the thing. There's always going to be evidence of it somewhere. And there's always, in my opinion, as we're seeing now, where they're going to be amazing people who are really just born to dig up the past, but in a good way. So what a blessing to have that woman, the daughter, I think you said, to study the knowledge, the lineage, and then decide, well, I'm passing it on, because that's how, and this is part of the hidden knowledge as well. I mean, I don't know if India has anything like the Vatican there that keeps this information to itself, or, the East, but definitely it makes a lot of sense what you're saying, that, and I so agree. I mean, Andi, you and I have had a couple of hours conversation off air, so we've spoken about so much, and there's so much we're still going to talk about in the future. But it's amazing for me, to realize just how mirrored all these things are. All the sacred teachings, all the greatest teachings of the world have been corrupted and really just and inverted, to use for the benefit of the controllers that are currently in control, So it's amazing to know that this knowledge is coming up and that people like yourself are starting to share it. That is incredible. I'm very excited because I know you do amazing things, especially with the Sanskrit, the language and stuff like that. So it's incredible. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. I mean, it's really just been such an honor, but like I said, it's been a challenge also to find authentic teachers. And one of the ways that I've been able to navigate it is I would go and I'd start to study with someone, but what I quickly started to observe was that the organizations around teachers are very infiltrated. So and in fact, the two teachers that I learned from, like a lot of the science, had both spent 20 or 30 years studying with some of these really well-known swamis around the world, and told me absolutely that the teachers themselves, even back in the 60s, would call out the fact that there was FBI and CIA infiltration into their organizations. And that continues to this day. So I guess it's the same way that I've approached Christianity. I have stayed away from from big organizations around it, because I just kept finding how controlled they were and how manipulated and how infiltrated they were. And I found that to be very true with some of the yoga lineages that you see in the United States or in the West. I don't know if it's the same in South Africa, but so I'm not going to call them out necessarily today. Maybe I will in the future, but
well, I think it's important in the future that we get to know these things, but obviously everything in its perfect time, because I think it is very important. I mean, and just to mention but a few of the Eastern guys that are compromised. I don't know what your feeling on that is. As well as Mother Teresa. We know, I think that's common knowledge now, that she's been compromised, that she was compromised.
The Dalai Lama, you said?
Dalai Lama, definitely. I mean, I've heard lots of dodgy things about him. I definitely believe he's been compromised as well. Who else was there from that area? Sadhguru, guys, Sadhguru. Wow, Sadhguru with his long beard, and he's there. And the next thing I see photographs of him hugging Klaus Schwab.
Yeah, it's interesting to look at
Sadhguru's right there.
Yeah, he's got a lot of connection to MIT, Sadhguru. And so there you go. Yeah, absolutely. So so the thing too that I want to point out is you have to reverse, you got to go back a few decades now to when China, the Chinese Communist Party took over Tibet, and they took over and killed thousands and thousands of Tibetan monks. And then they started in the country of China attacking and literally killing people that practice meditation or practice Falun Gong, which is like it's a martial art. So like Tai Chi or
Yes.
Qigong, anyone that practices anything remotely close to meditation or any of the ancient practices were killed, rounded up, killed, and slaughtered. And especially the monks, to where, they completely took over the country of Tibet. And so I believe that organization, so the monks that were still living, of course, they're going to be terrified. And I think that was infiltrated a while ago, definitely. Not to say, here's the thing too, is the monks themselves aren't evil. They're a lot, I met and studied with some of them. Not that I didn't study with Tibetan monks, I studied with other monks, but you can see that there's still, because these practices, and when I say practices, it's literally breathing in a certain pattern or making a sound. It's understanding the ways that, for example, on the subconscious level, meaning it's an automatic response, our emotions are directly connected to our pattern of breath. There's a pattern of breath for every human emotion. And when you realize that is a subconscious connection, it's like, oh, it can take the power back. You can literally retrain your own nervous system to, by making a certain pattern of breath to be in an emotional state. So you make the pattern of breath that corresponds to well-being or to happiness or joy. You will feel that state of that emotional state because they're so interlinked. And when you can start to, rather than have your mind programmed by media, you can start to sort of take back control of the whole system and how it's interconnected, and it's been so hijacked. It's very empowering. You're no longer susceptible to media, to all of the fear. I mean, we're still human and everything, but if you understand a practice that literally rebalances your nervous system to a calm state in 3 minutes, they can't run all the shenanigans constantly. So anyone with that knowledge, first they want to take it out. And so that's, I think that's been throughout history. But yeah, so it's not, the monks aren't evil. They're not even, the example I love to give for this is the swastika. It's actually a star chart. It's a star chart. There's a very important star in the sky called Polaris, which indicates north, like true north. And there's a constellation called the Big Dipper that rotates around Polaris. And the swastika shows the literal position of that constellation throughout the different seasons. So it, ancient people, the Cherokee people, the Vedic civilization, and others across the globe, they were very connected to the natural cycles of Earth, and they understood like that things go in seasons, and there are cycles to things, and so they would use and know and orient the time of the year when to grow depending on where that constellation was in the sky. And so that's powerful knowledge. Like really, it's powerful knowledge. It's a way to be in connection with this material realm that we're in, and understanding how it flows and how it moves. And so that's just one example of a symbol that they've taken it and twisted it and used for their purposes. It doesn't mean that the Big Dipper rotating around Polaris is evil. It doesn't mean knowledge of the Big Dipper rotating around Polaris is evil. But people that want to control society keep empowering knowledge to themselves, and they only share the sort of shallow surface level stuff.
Absolutely. And it's becoming more and more obvious as we're going along at the time of the Great Awakening, actually, how much of that has been hidden from us. So I'm very interested, and I know we're just about out of time, but I have one last question for you, just on the Buddhism as well. I know that we spoke about the Dalai Lama that has been compromised. We know that he is, according to my knowledge, been hauled in by CIA. Apparently, what I'm hearing is that there is a portal in Tibet, a very dark portal. Is that true? Do you know anything about that? That basically would be the dark side of this very amazing frequency of energy, so to speak.
I can't speak to what I will say is that in my travels and in my studies, I suspect that. I've suspected that for a while, that there's some sort of in the Himalayas, in Tibet, Nepal, also possibly Bhutan, in that region, there's some sort of something going on, in whether it's a portal or an entrance to something, or a gateway or some piece of ancient technology. Absolutely, I found a lot of stories about that, or legends about that, or and that makes even more sense to why they would want to, have the high level monks compromised, or infiltrated and controlled, or only doing what the way I picture it, when I see in my mind, I sort of picture what's happening over there. It's almost like I see these monks who in and of themselves are very pure beings, but they're like in a cage being controlled and only allowed to do, they're being very controlled. And I'm sure there are some who have gone to the dark side as well and are participating willingly, but I think there are a lot of very pure ones too that are just really being controlled and frightened, and
because if we look at a lot of, here again, I'm just looking at these little young boys, these little young monks going to these temples and things. I'm sorry, I've never even thought about anything gross that could happen there. But again, here I am. In these times, who would have thought that we would have heard the things we're hearing about, right? So again, this just got me thinking, what is actually happening in those monasteries with these young monks that go there? And I know in Thailand, it's these guys have to go, I think, for 2 years, like our guys here in South Africa had to go to army training. These guys have got to go to a monastery and get training from the monks and understand that way of life, because it's such a big part of their culture. But also, let's never forget, it's quite a heavy-handed way of dealing with spiritual matters, so to speak, because they're very strict with their meditations. And these little Shaolin monks, these little guys, you see pictures of them sometimes, the Shaolin monks, that can do these hectic things with their legs and the splits and the martial arts and stuff that goes with it. There's no mercy shown on these little kids, so it's making me wonder again, is that part of fear indoctrination? Is that part of their grooming? Is that part of how they get controlled? It's almost like they don't question. right? So that could be part of that. I don't know. I'm thinking a lot. I've never even thought about this. So this for me is the first time I'm actually bringing up this topic, but it's just bringing up a whole lot of questions, because we can't think that it happens with some and not the other. We know about the underbelly of Thailand, for starters, and what that industry is about. How are we even thinking that it's not happening to boys? I've never had any proof. I've never heard any rumblings of it, but I'm sorry, I'm sitting here and I question it, especially with that going on, especially with the heavy. And because I've also heard from some of our survivors that I've spoken to that they would be taken and they would chant the Now, anyone who chants the knows that is the most sacred of all the mantras, right? And they are using the sound of the to open up these portals with monks chanting the And that's part of what they're doing, is they're using the incredible vibration of the sound, because we all know how healing sound is. We all know, we've heard amazing testimonies about people that have healed from horrendous accidents and things with music, over time and what have you. So we know sound is incredibly powerful, the vibration of sound. So I'm wondering just what your thoughts are on that.
Yeah, sound is very, very well. First of all, I do have firsthand knowledge of things going on with little boy monks in a certain organization. Also, the other thing that the other thing that comes to mind is Zen Buddhism is very strict. Like, they literally will get smacked for moving during meditation. And so you're right, it reminded me of like grooming, and in sort of to where by the time those monks, if they grow up in that sort of a system or regimen, there's no way by the time they get older that they're going to even question the authority of their teacher or their master, so that makes a lot of sense.
They're also taken in at a very young age, aren't they, these little boys? How old are they taken? Yeah, look at that, man. Come on. That's the time they go through their first rituals, right? The age of 5. So they go to them when they're 5. Oh my gosh.
Well, and that's again too where I want to be careful. Not every single organization that has monks is doing that, but I do know, there are some, just like probably not every Catholic priest, but there are some.
Yeah.
And then the other thing too about that Om sound. So that sound, that's the M with the dot over it. It's a very sacred sound. It's a very powerful sound, and it corresponds to the pineal gland in the body. Literally making that sound, it vibrates your pineal gland, which is center in your brain. It's right in smack center in the brain. Actually, if you take a cross section of the human brain, it forms the shape of the eye of Horus. I don't know if you've seen that. So yes. Like the eye of Horus is literally a map to the physiology of the human brain. And the pineal is like a really important piece of the puzzle. So a lot of studies and stuff have been done on when you make this sound in the body, it literally releases positive endorphins. Like it releases oxytocin. It releases other positive neurotransmitters that help to, what they've seen is doing certain types of meditation using this technology. They did PET scans on the brain of people that had never meditated or never made any of these sounds or anything, or done any of these practices. And then another group, and after 8 weeks, not 8 years, 8 weeks, there were measurable differences in the gray matter of the brain. The gray matter is where those the neural pathways are actually formed, meaning that it is possible to create new patterns in your mind. It is possible to you know, to heal from things, to overcome things. You're not stuck forever in the conditioning of your childhood. And so, again, another thing that control people in control of a system wanting to control people would not want that to, like, no, they want you to think you're sick and you need the doctor and you need their systems, or else, you know, they do not want you to be self-sufficient, independent, sovereign, empowered beings, because then you're not easy to control. So, you know, it's another very logical reason why certain knowledge is kept in the hands of a few.
Absolutely. Yeah. I've absolutely loved this discussion, and I'm so looking forward to having more like this in the future, because I've been looking for this. You know, we know that everything has been inverted, and it's just so wonderful to come across incredible people like yourself who has the knowledge and you can share it with us. So I'm so grateful that you've been able to share with us today what you have, and we're definitely going to be having these conversations again very soon. We'll have a chat off air and we'll let you guys know. But basically what we're saying is, yes, the Eastern teachings have been corrupted as well. So just like the church, guys, we're all in the same boat, you know, and it's when we realize that we can stop fighting each other about who believes what and what's better than anything else. But then we can realize, oh, we've all been duped a little bit. So let us just wipe the sleep out of our eyes, shake off, wash our face with cold water, conjoin hands and link arms with the person next to you. And let's just walk forward together. It's just so amazing to know this information. So Andi, thank you so much for joining me today. I don't know, is there anything else that you'd like to say in closing today for us?
I just want to say thank you. And I wanted to say that, yeah, that's so, I look forward, I'm just going to say it this way. I look forward to a less hostile environment between people that are all on the same side. You know, I see a lot of people fighting for truth that I see their hearts pure loving. They love God. Like, just like I found that all over the world, no matter, I found people that truly have so much love for God, the creator of the cosmos, the creator of the universe, the creator of heaven and earth. And they went by different religious labels, but I found that same human heart and that same spark of divinity that you can't break. And so I just would encourage maybe a little less attack on others that come from different parts of the world or different upbringings or backgrounds, because the thing is, when you come from attack like that, it really shuts down a lot of possibilities for beautiful teaching and learning. I'm always a student.
Absolutely. I mean, that is just incredible, and it's so true. You know, when we really look beyond all these divisions that have been created by the powers that be, you know, and then we see the truth of what is really actually behind all of it. And at the end of the day, we're all connected. We are one. We are all coming from God's good grace. And, you know, I think it's very true what you say, you know, less hostility would be incredible, just to understand each other a little bit more. But definitely we're going to be going further into that. So again, thank you so much. It's been wonderful to have you on our show again. And to all our viewers out there, thank you so much for watching. Hello, Carmen. I've seen your comments.
I wish I could see the chat, but I couldn't. So, yeah.
Yes, Carmen's she's supporting us here today. So, and so is Mona and Thea and lots of others. So thank you so much. Lovely to see you all here. So good now that I've learned how to press a few buttons and I can see the chat. Took me so long to figure out how to see the chat and be on Zoom. Very good to be able. I feel all professional now. Thank you so much.
Figure that out.
Thank you so much. God bless you all, everyone. And if you haven't already, please give us a like, a share, and a subscribe here on SOULutions. Find us on Telegram as well, on Facebook, on BitChute, on Twitter, on Odyssey. We're going to be moving more and more of our stuff over to BitChute, so please follow us there as well. And on Aquarius Rising Africa 2. The first channel was struck, but we on our way up again. Thank you so much, everybody. God bless you all. Take care of yourselves, and we shall see you very, very soon.
Yay! Well, hello, everybody. Welcome back to SOULutions with Chanti. Today, as opposed to Aquarius Rising Africa, my other channel where I like to talk about topics of healing and the more gentle stuff. So, and of course, I am beyond delighted to have you with me again, Cathy O'Brien. And I know last week we were meant to chat last week, but my timing, whatever. So, but wow, what a pleasure to have you back this week with me, and welcome everybody in the chats. It's always so nice to see you all, and thank you so much for joining us. Cathy, how are you? Welcome back.
I'm so happy to be here and happy our timing worked this time, so we could just get back together and talk about the amazing things that are going on in our world right now. You know, all that fear mongering that was imposed on the whole globe about the eclipse on April 8th was just, people weren't buying into it. Everybody gathered together and shared the joy and the wonder of watching the magnificence of it, or at least tuning into the positive vibe. It feels like we're in a rising, heightened vibration that is exposing negativity and also kind of shedding it away. Like it can't even stick to us anymore. This is such an amazing time to be alive. What a time to shine.
Absolutely. And I wanted to actually talk to you about that as well, this amazing eclipse. And also, I know recently you were in the Eyes Wide Shut conference, and I've heard so many beautiful stories about you being there. And we had a little chat off air now, but I'm going to ask you to go there just in a few minutes. But the first thing I want to actually talk about is that eclipse, because you know, as you say, there's so much fear mongering going on around it. The world's going to end and the this and the that. I'm like, no, for me, that was absolutely my time to shine. I feel like I'm a chicken that finally hatched out of her egg and like, bloop, here I am in this world. And I feel on so many levels renewed. I feel revived. But tired, yes. I feel like, you know, after something or someone has given birth, you might feel a little bit tired, but so ready to take on whatever this amazing world has to offer. And also, I was saying to you, you know, on the 9th, at about 2:30 or 3 in the morning, over here, it just started raining and raining and raining for about 6 or 7 hours solidly. It was just, I told you I was worried about my 2 little tortoises in the garden, but thankfully I saw the one, so I'm assuming the other one's also right. I was just thinking, oh, my tortoise is fine.
That's so sweet.
Yes.
I had noticed.
Exactly.
the beauty of nature on the day of the eclipse, when we were all supposed to be so scared and everything. Nature was really relaxed, interactive, and amazing. It's like all the animals were just in harmony and in flow, and the birds weren't flying away from the squirrels, you know, and the fox were out in my yard just playing among the squirrels and the birds, and there was like just a peace. I was walking my my chow chow chi, and we just had the most beautiful time communing with nature, because everything was in an extreme harmony and peace, the relaxation. And some of that tired you mentioned might just be part of the relaxation. It's like, oh, finally we can relax and enjoy it,
Yes,
you
after
know,
struggle.
and all of
It's like,
nature's doing it.
yeah,
So
absolutely.
when I found that happening, my daughter and I decided to plant our spring garden out in right on the day of the eclipse, and it was so phenomenal. That garden is flourishing like no one I've ever had before. But whoa! But as soon as we finished, I mean, the moment we finished, here came the rain, and it was very gentle, like the perfect watering of that garden. And then it stopped. The sun came back out. It was just like so exciting. But there's so much beauty and miracles around us. If we keep our head up, our arms wide open, our heart open, we can see all that's happening. If we cave into the fear, we miss the miracles that are actually unfolding around us. And I think those perpetrators, that dark cabal, wants us to cower down instead of see the
I
magnitude of
agree.
what's happening. Eyes
I
wide open.
I agree. Not eyes wide shut anymore.
Right,
We're
eyes
walking
wide
around
open.
eyes
Yeah,
wide open, not eyes wide shut with all
yeah,
these
yeah, yeah.
layers of whatever it is. Like, I fully agree with that. And I really think that it's a choice, right?
Yes,
How we look at life. It's a choice as to whether we are looking at the fear mongering and getting sucked into that dark world, because it really is easy to get sucked into that when you're seeing and you're focusing on trauma and tragedy and hardship. And yes, it's not like, I mean, I don't ignore that there are people and situations going through trauma and hardship. And I'm, as a healer, I'm always wanting and willing
yeah,
to help those who choose. I've long ago learned only if somebody chooses to be helped and asks for help is it my right or responsibility, if you will, to give that help. Otherwise, it really is like throwing in pearl with a swine, right? And it often just it's ignored or not valued or whatever the case might be. But it truly is those that wish to be helped, and whether they can verbalize that or not, we know when someone is asking for help and there is that cry of help and you're in a position to help, you certainly do that. But there are many who don't want that right now, and we also have to respect that, right? I don't know what your take is on that. I'd be interested to know.
absolutely the same. Mark always said you can only help those who will help themselves. And it's so
Right.
true. It's like you can't tell someone they're under mind control. They can't hear over the program screaming in their ear. It's up to each and every one of us. Face the truth, our own truth, embrace it, and begin the healing process. We have to do it for ourselves, and it's within us all to heal. So I like to raise awareness on what is going on in the world, because awareness is the first step towards positive, necessary change. And that one light of truth sometimes is all it takes to light the path forward for survivors of abuse. And I like to provide survivors with healing. And then all of humanity really needs hope, and to know that this darkness being imposed is an attempt to manipulate us. We have all the power. We have the most amazing resiliency of body, mind, and spirit we've been blessed with all along. We just need to remember that. Stop looking outside ourselves to these self-imposed, self-appointed, self-anointed leaders. No, we don't. We don't need to be following these leaders we didn't elect. We need to be following our birthright to live the love we are freely.
Exactly. And miracles are our birthright. I truly believe that. I
Yes.
mean, we are walking miracles, and when we start looking within to see just how incredible, my late partner always he used to love looking at pregnant women. Like, he'd look at he'd say, "You women are walking miracles. How do you do it? How do you grow another human inside you?" And and then eventually it was like, didn't take me long though to catch on. It's like, you're right. As a woman, we are walking miracles. We give birth to another human baby. And that in itself is such a beautiful thing. And, and that's just one aspect of what we are able to give birth to. And, the same goes for men. You might not be able to give birth to babies, and yes, you can't. But there are many ideas, many healing. Every cell in your body holds the potential to give birth to something new, to get a new creation, a new understanding, a new awareness. And I love that we are here all together at this time, being able to figure that out. And together, as Ram Dass says, we are all just walking each other home. I love that idea.
Oh, I think that the whole family unit has been attacked.
Yeah.
So horribly by this, using mind control to divide. Really, the division in families is who bought into the controlled media narrative of fear mongering and who is awake and aware with their eyes wide open, saying, no, I am not going to cave in to this imposed manipulation and control. When we realize it's all about mind control, knowledge is our defense against mind control. Understanding those components gives us that defense to say no. And it gives us an ability that we can reattach to our life's purpose and who we were meant to be. Mind control is used because it inhibits our free thought, our ability to choose how we respond, whether we participate. It inhibits that free will choice. It inhibits our soul expression. Our soul expression is where our moral compass is. It inhibits our ability to gather the strength of the human spirit and that infinite power of love and live our life's purpose. When we do that, when we look within, when we embrace that, that's where we all naturally unite. All of a sudden, this imposed division, whether it's in families or society or anything, it all melts away and we resume living life the way that it's intended to be. And I'm watching families now embrace that reality, and people everywhere are tossing aside the negative. And it's like we're in this heightened vibration right now where as awareness continues to rise, this collective consciousness, this power of love, people living that again, it's like all this dark negativity has just fallen away. It's like we're shining our light so bright that the dark can't exist in it. And it's a phenomenal, amazing time to be alive and to see that accelerating right now. Yeah, what a great time to have voice and to be able to share insight into exactly what we can do to reclaim our power.
I fully agree with that. This is a beautiful time to be alive. And I was saying to you off air, I think you are such an important leader in our healing community at this point in time. And I've said this to so many of my guests who I have, who have overcome the most horrific situations in their lives. I honestly honor each and every one of you who've been through that hell, because it literally is hell. And here you are on the other side, shining and vibrating in such a magnificent way that you have no option but to draw to you those who choose to vibrate on the same frequency as you. And through just your amazing energy and your amazing insight and the love that you have for humanity, you're able to draw them into your orb, if you will. And that to me is such a gift. You have such a gift to do that. So I have a question for you, and because I know you've really been through the thick of it in your life, from a very young child. And I always love your love story. I'm still going to get that out of you. I always say I'm a sucker for a good love story. I love it. And thank God that you've been blessed with that relationship with Mark, who took you out of the system, and your daughter. Thank God for that. I have a question, because there's a lot of survivors, overcomers. I love to call you guys overcomers. Survivors to me, and there's nothing wrong with it, but it feels like you're still holding on. Overcomers means you're out and you're in the sunlight, and you just, none of us are perfect, but you're just radiating light, and you're sharing the gift of strength, because my God, it really is. It takes so much inner strength to overcome what you guys have overcome. What would you say to people that are coming out of that darkness now, that are really battling? Because I know there are people, and it's beautiful. I get so many emails and I get so many messages from people. Some are battling, others are battling less, others are very much entrenched and angry. And, so I'm like really speaking to a lot of people from different realms that have been in this, taken into the satanic cult against their will, and trying their darndest to get out. What would be, let's say, the simplest way? Simple is not easy. I get it. Simple might be simple, but it's not that it's necessarily easy. Advice that you would give to people coming out of trauma and stepping into the light. What would be the simplest way that you can offer advice to people?
I think through PTSD Time to Heal, which is posted on my website. It's available on Audible. It's everywhere. It's the healing methods that Mark taught me. It's not about me. It's about us all. It's about reminding us all that we have within us the ability to heal, no matter what life has thrown our way. What happens to us is not who we are. Who we are is an infinite beauty and strength within ourselves. And we need to tap into that in order to heal. And to realize is a process. It's not something that just suddenly is, but it's a journey in itself. So be patient with yourself every step of the way. Be gentle with yourself and take the time to fully heal. Write out the memories and put it on paper. It's so healing. It opens neuron pathways in the brain. It helps heal on so many levels at once by doing that. If we feel immobilized by anything, in fear, confused, if we're grieving, if we feel guilty, if we feel rage, put it all on paper. Write it out on paper, because it shifts it out of that overwhelming emotion into logic where it can be dealt with. And then add a solution. And of course, I spell that SOUL like you do. And the solution opens the neuron pathways further in the brain and helps us to see a clear path forward. It lifts us out of that dark pit of negativity that's been imposed on us and gives us an ability to see the beauty and miracles that life really does offer us. So if people take their time and are gentle with themselves, everybody can make it out of that pit of imposed negativity, because we've been blessed with that capacity all along. We just need to embrace it, realize it, live it, and be kind to ourselves in that process. We don't have to run out and be public about it. We don't have to tell everybody about it. It doesn't have to work that way. We need to write it all out first. We need to heal from within first and be strong in who we are, so that by the time we do say something about it, that we don't expect someone to validate it for us, because that, I think, is the single most harmful thing to survivors, are those who speak out before they're ready, expecting to get validation. And some people don't want to hear it for varying reasons. One, we're all on our own learning path. Some aren't ready to embrace it. Others, if they embrace that, they have to look at their own issues, and some aren't ready for that. So, we have to realize, You know, we're all on different levels of healing awareness, living the love we are, living our life's purpose. So we just to validate for us, once we know who we are and why we're here, then that's the time to share.
I think there have been two things that you said there that have really hit home for me as well. And one of them is to speak when you are ready. And I agree, especially on platforms like this, you know, because there are so many critics out there, and there are so many nasty people that say the most horrific things sometimes and accuse.
Yes.
Whether you are a host of a channel or whether you are a guest, there are so many people out there who have their own opinions. And if we haven't understood fully yet that that's really their projection, we do take things like that personally, for sure. And that's the first thing is, you know, you got to feel strong enough to be, you know, before you speak publicly, and you will know when that time is. And before that, and you know, in the run up to that, and I agree, writing things down. I've been a great advocate of that. My clients and students over the years, that's something I've always said, do it. Yes, but I don't feel like writing. I'm going, well, then you're never going to see the benefit of it. So, you know, but so when you start doing it, you start seeing the benefit. But very important is to be kind to yourself. And I think, you know, Cathy, that for me as well is such a tough one that a lot of people battle with. And I think especially survivors and overcomers of SRA, because the Lucy's have been so skilled at making these victims, I'm going to call them victims because in that place they are victims for sure, feel like they are absolutely worth nothing, right? That you are worth nothing. You are not worth the air you breathe. You are a piece of scum. You are here just because for our pleasure, and we have the right to do with you what we want. And generally, the abused victims get treated like absolute nonsense. They get treated like garbage. So I would absolutely imagine that that is quite a journey to learn how to be kind to yourself again, right? What would you say, you know, if I look at those little steps, because there are lots of moving parts here, would be a good way for people to find kindness for themselves?
It's essential, especially before getting into relationships, because otherwise a lot of victims who want to be survivors gravitate to someone who abuses them further and continues and perpetuates what they feel they deserve. Or, you know, we need to realize that these abusers feed off of low vibration. It's their vibration. Their vibration is hatred, fear, division, all that negativity. That's where they reside. That's not who we are. They're manipulating us because they fear who we really are. Who we are with the strength of the human spirit and power of love is infinite sources of power. And we have that within us. Each and every one of us does. They only want us to forget that we can access that and live that. So they keep us in that low vibration. So it takes a complete healing of body, mind, and spirit to really remember who we are, why we're here, and emerge that way. Because in my case, when I first started speaking out, it was love for my daughter that compelled me to speak out. This was back in 1990, before people knew anything about ritual abuse and before they knew about mind control and human trafficking, child sex trafficking, the corruption of these puppet masters in control. Before people knew there was even a swamp in Washington, D.C. You know, I mean, I was speaking out of love for my daughter because I needed to free her from the corrupted Child Protective Services system. And that love, a mother's love, is the most powerful force in the universe. So, wow, what a motive to speak out. So I was speaking out, not out of anger, not out of bitterness, not out of hatred, because that's their vibration. They got enough of that from me while they abused me. No, they're not going to get any more, as love for my daughter that compelled me to speak out. My love for humanity that compels me to speak out. And with love being so powerful, it changes the whole dynamic of being able to reach out. So it's so important that we reach that point. And the best way to do it is to look within, see who we are, why we're here, remember our life's purpose. And when we look within and realize what a miracle it is we even survived what we experienced, we realize how blessed we are. And all of a sudden it takes us on the path to that infinite source of love.
That's so true. That's so true. And it starts there with prayer. And just, and I think it really helps if you have kind people around you as well, and this is what I also say to overcomers, is that there's actually a whole world of beautiful human beings out there as well. And I think there's been so many people who've been in this situation that have been surrounded by horrific humans, and especially when you're a child and every adult in your community and in your environment seems to have been involved in these horrors, right?
Yeah.
So, and to maybe learn, and through that you learn how to trust one person or two people, and as you say, love for your daughter. And also, if you don't have a child, love for an animal. I find animals, right, to be incredibly healing. I mean, I know that I've worked with lots of drug addicts in the past recovering, and every time they've got a little dog or a kitten or something, they've got something to come home to, something that relies on them, something that loves them unconditionally. And I think that is such a great healer as well, right? What do you say about animals?
It is. Well, by the time intelligence insider Mark Phillips lifted me out of the Washington, D.C. swamp of MK Ultra, mind control, human trafficking, and all that I had been used in the first 30 years of my existence at that time, by the time Mark lifted my daughter and me out of that swamp, I didn't know good people even existed in the world. My whole environment had been saturated with such extreme negativity and horrific abuses, as I'm sure so many other survivors can relate to. And it's important to realize exactly what you said. There are good people in the world, but I didn't know that when Mark rescued me. And I was safe for the first time. My daughter was safe for the first time. My brain knew I was safe, and the neuron pathways started opening, memory started emerging, and still I couldn't think to trust Mark until I saw the animals trusting him. He had so many pets. And even when he rescued my daughter and me, he rescued our pets too. He rescued our cows and horses and guineas and chickens and dogs and cats and everything, because he knew that people who abuse children abuse animals and vice versa. The two go together. So when he rescued them and then had his own pets loving all over him, I couldn't think to trust Mark, but I certainly could sense, like an animal could sense. And my senses had been heightened through my experience anyway. My intuitions, my telepathy, my ability to feel the vibrational energy, and like, wow, yes, I can trust Mark. I thought he must be an angel or an alien or something, because I didn't know good people existed. And he told me that good people are by far the majority, that I needed to learn to think beyond my life's experience to realize the reality of the beauty of this world and the beauty of humanity and the power of the human spirit and the strength that comes with love. It was a bit of a journey to reach that realization, but with how fortunate for me that I had someone as wise and as intelligent as Mark, not only telling me the truth, but living that truth himself.
I was going to actually ask you, how would you, you know, from someone who's been there, how would you learn to trust someone? And it's exactly what you answered that question. And I want to just reiterate that to the listeners and the viewers as well, is that, I mean, I know my dad was known as the gentle giant. He was 6'6", and he was just this beautiful human being. And there were two things that always were drawn to my father: animals and children. And he was so gentle with animals and children. And to this day, you know, you speak, I mean, he's passed away now, but you speak about, if you speak to my cousins and stuff, who were kids when we were kids, you know, we lived on a big farm, and every holiday their parents would send them to our farm and stuff like that. And he taught the boys how to fish, and he taught them how to drive the tractor. And you know, they still see him to this day as their hero in so many ways. It's amazing, actually, you know. And it's true, you know, if you see an animal trusts a human, and
Yes.
children are born without fear, you can see immediately if the animal cowers away or whatever, or if the child is being obedient, you know, because they have to, because fear's been instilled in them, or if they just are so happy and so joyful, they'll run to that person. Animals' tails, the dogs will wag their tails like this, you know. So there is really, and of course, you have to learn how to trust your intuition, which comes along with discernment. And that was another thing we want to talk about today. So maybe you can speak to us about learning discernment through these difficult times when you're coming out of this hell.
Oh, the discernment comes with, I think, learning to trust yourself and to believe in truth again, to be able to realize what that is. So it's part of the healing journey. And it takes some time to really reach that point of knowing your own truth. Once you know your own truth, it's easy to discern truth outside yourself and to start recognizing it again. It was a beautiful journey for me. I remember the moment that it really clicked, like, wow, I can trust in truth again, because it was a moment when I could trust in myself again, point in healing. It's something that just comes with our healing journey. What one Mark had taught me too, when that I needed to heal before he would have a relationship with me, because I needed to know who I am in order to have something to give in our relationship. And it's important for us all to know exactly who we are before we get in relationships, or we might get in one where we have a crossover of memory. What happens where all of a sudden someone is having a flashback and it gets tangled with maybe a moment of passion with the person that they're currently with, and it all gets confused. And, you know, that needs to be separated. We need to know who we are 100%, so that we're not relying on someone else or reflecting off someone else, but rather when we're in a relationship that's 100%, then that's when the beauty and the magnitude of love can unfold without someone trying to manipulate or dominate the other in any way, or a survivor impose their past on their present. We need to heal from our past so it doesn't intrude on our present, so it doesn't intrude on our relationships, so it doesn't blind us to what truth really is. Who to trust begins with how to trust, and how to trust is when we can trust ourselves and know who we are.
Exactly. And that's exactly what you're saying. You know, it's all about trusting yourself. When you've learned how to be true to yourself, when you've learned the gift that you are to this world, when you've learned that you are this walking, talking miracle, that you are loved and adored by God like no other, you know, then you will automatically connect with those who have the same experience, right? And then those that are around you have no interest in hurting you. They have no interest in harming you. They just have your best interest at heart. They want to make sure you're okay, because they realize the importance of all of us being okay, right? So, and way beyond okay, actually. to be healed and happy and healthy, because we are the ones ultimately who are here to create this new world that we all choose to live in, where we're free of these horrific satanic rituals and abuses and traumas, and where, as you say, animals, children, women, men as well, are absolutely traumatized from morning till night with fear and whatever else goes along with that. That really should be now something of the past. And it's about leaving that behind. And guys, we know, and I'm going to put Cathy's website, by the way, just on the topic here, because someone asked me to put it in the chat. I'm going to be putting Cathy's website in the description area of the recording. So you're welcome to go on there, check it out. And as she said, the PTSD Time to Heal is on there on the website as well to listen to. And that came, I just love, it came from Mark, by the way. Sorry, my mind is going too fast. The love of her life who rescued out of the system. I think that is such a blessing. And I honestly, I wish that for everyone out there, that everyone who's been through these horrors, and even if you haven't been through these horrors, all of us have had a tough time at some point in life, you know, that there are good people in your life that will show you what it is to be loved, that you are worthy of being loved, that you are worthy of everything good that comes your way, right? So that's amazing.
When
I heard that you, sorry, carry on.
Oh, that's is good. I'm sure you are coming up with something brilliant there, as always. I was just going to say that when in my healing process, when I realized what I had been forced to do under mind control, and how I'd been, when I remembered all that, I didn't know how I could live with myself. You know, that was so horrific, and that I was told, well, you need to learn to love yourself, and there wasn't any daily affirmation or anything in the world that I could bring in from the outside that would make me understand how to love myself, until I went within to see who I am at the vibration, the energy level of my being. And I found that to be love. And that's when I learned to live the love that I am. And that was so much easier than trying to love myself from the outside in after what I'd been through, and to find that from the inside out. But Mark had encouraged me in that process and told me, said that I wasn't responsible for what I had been tortured to do under mind control, that my abusers are responsible for that. That's true for what we've all endured on this planet. These puppet masters, these self-appointed, self-anointed leaders need to be held accountable for their crimes against humanity, for their crimes against children, for their sexualization of our children. They need to be held accountable for that. We are not responsible for that. We're responsible for knowing who we are, why we're here, living our life's purpose, and embracing the truth that makes us free, knowing that knowledge that is our defense against mind control, and to realize it's been within us all along. We just forgot, you know. So it's a good reminder for everyone, for all survivors, for everyone everywhere who is struggling with guilt and grief and all else that this life puts in the path, that once we become aware, then we're responsible for all of our actions going forward, and we can choose. That's when we have that beautiful choice to live the love we are, to make sure all of our actions are true to soul, and to make sure our life's purpose. So it's a beautiful thing that I think all survivors and people everywhere need to know.
I wanted to ask you about that. And I know you say that, you know, obviously you had repressed memories that obviously would have started coming up in your healing process. What was the most difficult thing for you to deal with when your memories started surfacing? How did you deal with that?
I think the most difficult thing was to understand that the mind photographically records events surrounding trauma, so much so that I would hear the voices of my abusers in my head. I would hear the voices of my programmers telling me, instructing me on what I was to do. And of course, I began writing all that out. But hearing that in my head, when it first starts, it feels so crazy. The first step towards healing feels the most insane, because it's like an awareness and a realization of, wow, this is what I've been through. This is what's going on in my head. And I think there's a lot of confusion right now. I absolutely believe in the technological aspects of targeted individuals and all that we hear about. But there's also a crossover of information, because they're hearing the voices in their head, think it's being currently imposed, when in fact it's childhood or mind manipulation that's coming to photographic conscious awareness. And we need to learn that difference. It's an important aspect, and to know that we really are okay. Of that, that healing, that first step towards healing feels so crazy. Then we understand ourselves, and with that understanding, we learn to be gentle with ourselves and go through the process and start the process of writing out and start the process of healing. And then every step of the way from that point on is one of progress and healing and joy, and reclaiming reclaiming brain space, reclaiming self-control. And so it's beautiful after that point, but it takes that whoa,
Yes.
And we got to get through that realization. We got to get through that curve and know that we're okay. That is just realizing the craziness that was imposed on us. That doesn't,
Right.
again,
I think,
what happens to us is not who we are.
Exactly. I think, I think it would be great for people coming out of this to realize that when they start getting these memories or the flashbacks or what have you, and of course, I absolutely understand that initially it must be so crazy to listen to this. And Charmaine is saying, here and the smells, so you have the audio, you
Yes.
have the sensory. It's like a sensory overload on
Yes.
so many levels. But to get through that, I think, is the absolute worst. But then thereafter, when these things start coming up, embrace it, celebrate it, because it means your body is ready to heal. Your mind is ready to heal, because we know that the mind will protect you at all costs, right? The mind, the reason why we forget and suppress many things is because the mind is trying to protect your little body and your little brain, this poor little child that was having so much go on that no one should have to go through.
Right.
So, of course, the mind will protect you. And now the mind is telling you, listen, we're ready to heal. So whatever's coming up now, it's like oil and water separating, the way I see it. You can have oil and water together and it's all shaken up and you don't know what's what. And then you put it down on in the quietude and you let it be still. And then it starts separating. The oil rises to the top. That, I think, is actually a really, really good thing. And I think especially when people start detoxing, because a big part of healing is to detox at the body at cellular level as well, and at the same time, you're going to have the nausea, you're going to have the vomiting, maybe the body spasms and stuff like that. I think that is such a good sign, because that's your body saying, I'm ready to release this gunk out of myself now. So to sort of realize that, yes, you're going to feel crappy for a day or two, maybe even a week, but drink lots of water, get lots of rest. And when it comes up, welcome it. I think it's so important. And I'd love your advice on this as well, because that's the advice I give the people that I work with. Welcome it. Say, thank you for releasing out of my body. I no longer need that. I choose to have a clear, beautiful, harmonious vessel that is my body, so that I can be more of a conduit for Christ than what I am for this pain and sadness and sorrow. What is your take on that?
Yes, we learn to listen to our bodies. Our bodies tell us and remind us. And we need to, that's a good time to pick up a pen and paper and start writing it out, because that stops the body memory. The body memory is happening because it's saying, hey, pay attention to me. You got to remember this. This is important. So remember it. And when we write it out and open the neuron pathways in the brain, the body doesn't have to express that anymore. So we can alleviate so much of that aspect of memory. Smelling the smells is an important thing. You know, that's a good way to be able to discern what is program over what is a reality of what's going on. Example of that would be, it's so important to deprogram the program first in order to know what's real. Like my experience with George Bush Sr. turning into a lizard, you know, and that's not a reality out there somewhere. I'm just saying, in my particular situation, he was capitalizing on that innate fear in the human mind of reptiles to manipulate me. And when I first saw that, it's like, oh, this is just too much. And then it was like, I heard the voice. I went back. How did I get there? What was it really about? I started hearing the programming. I saw the setup. I saw what was being done, how I was being manipulated, smelling the smells. All of a sudden, it's like, no, that was not what I thought I experienced at first. Was the terrorizing program that would have stopped me from being able to remember the absolute truth. Because once I got past that, wow, did I ever remember a lot of important information, was able to fully heal instead of getting bogged down in that. So there's so many different aspects of the healing process that we need to carefully navigate our way through so that we know the truth. Once we come out the other side, oh my gosh, I'm so excited now. It's like, now we can discover what really is the intelligent life out there, what really is happening out there versus what we're being fear-mongered with. You know, it's like, if it's fear, it's just, that needs to be examined, you know, because the fear is how we get manipulated. The reality and the beauty of what goes on in our world, you know, is so phenomenal. So we need to make sure we don't get bogged down in the programming, whether it's individual or whether it's manipulating society or anything else. It's kind of like, too, how people look and see all this satanic stuff just right in our faces now. They're like, oh, the whole world's gone evil. It's like, it's been that way. These people have been around a long, long time, the same handful. What we're seeing isn't new. What's new is that we're seeing it, and that's our first step towards a positive, necessary change. So, you know, we got to look past the imposed fear to realize, oh, this is our chance. This is our time to shine. Obviously, the truth is already shining because these dark secrets are being exposed. So there's so many different and important ways to look at this, and it's all very healing to embrace the truth.
You know, I absolutely love that, because this is what I keep saying. You know, the more of us who choose to speak, the more of us who choose to come out of the dark place, who choose to sort of say, well, clearly, you know, and I know a lot of people don't have memory of exactly what happened, but are aware that something went down. And it's exactly what you say. Take that pen and paper, decide. I think the first step is the decision to choose healing, choose the healing. It's a decision you make. And once you've made that decision, is it scary? Yes, absolutely. You don't know what's going to pop out, and you don't know where. But I think with spiritual strength, spiritual fitness, and really a strong faith in your creator, You sit with God, you sit with your memories, and to trust that you're only going to get as much as what you can handle. And yes, in the beginning, it does seem crazy. I would absolutely agree. It's like, I would imagine all of this stuff just comes bubbling up, and you've got to try and figure out and make head or tail of that. But once it started, it kind of then would slow down somewhat. And then you are able to make more head or tail of it. And that's when the healing would really set in. Is that correct from your standpoint?
Oh, absolutely. It is. It's so important that we remember that we already survived it. Remembering it is just to be able to reclaim our brain space, reclaim our self-control, inner peace, our ability to access our life's purpose and live the love we are. Remembering it is the light side. It's not reliving it. We already survived it. How amazing is that? You know,
Exactly.
just that we have that capacity is just, you know, so really there's nothing to fear in writing it out. But it is important that when we complete that we come gently back into the present, into the now, and embrace life as it is. Get outside, take your shoes off, feel the earth beneath your feet, feel the wind on your skin, the sun on your skin. You hear the sounds of nature, breathe in the air, be consciously aware of that beautiful reconnection with the divine, because that is how life is intended to be lived. And we have to consciously choose that along our us too, to keep a good balance in our life.
I absolutely agree. I think it's so important to be able to have it. And as you say, you know, the joy is knowing that I've come through that. I'm no longer there. And that's where, you know, is to reclaim your mind again, because what they've done, I mean, it's MK Ultra mind control. They've controlled the thoughts you think. They've controlled the narrative you've had. They've controlled what you think about yourself. They've controlled how you've lived your life in many instances. So what's happening now is you reversing that and you reclaiming your beautiful mind, your gift from God. So it's really that, for me, I want to say, is the celebration. And I'm not saying it's like, rah, rah, yeah, it's all going to be fine after the first 5 minutes. No, you're a human being. It's going to be difficult. There are going to be some parts that are really crazy and that you have to really think about. And obviously, if they forced you to do stuff while you undermine control, yes, it does come to obviously the realization, wow, did I do that? Do I need to forgive myself? And as you say, realizing what they did to you is not your responsibility. It's not your fault. But what you do have right now is the opportunity to take responsibility for your life as it is in this moment, at this time, where if you choose joy, happiness, healing, that is available to you. You know, I always say the greatest gift that God has given us is free will and choice. So I believe that people who are coming out of the situation, man, you guys are so strong. And you have the ability to be the most incredible healers. And I do believe everyone coming out of the system now are magnificent healers. And there are so many more that are going to follow. And the ones that are coming out now are the front runners, the forerunners in coming out of the system. And I believe you guys are the healers, the true, genuine healers of the world, because you've literally been through the worst of the worst of the worst of the worst. And now you've been able to turn that around and you're able to show somebody else how to do it. Not tell them, show them. Show them with your true 100% intelligence of your entire being. It's not something you studied at university. It's not whether you got A levels or O levels or whatever it might be. It is literally being the change, being the healer, not studying for healing or psychology or psychiatrist or psychiatry or something. Every cell of your body has been through the healing, and people resonate with that. people resonate with that frequency you emit. They are drawn to you because you are in your truth. And I can absolutely attest to that, seeing people like yourself, Cathy, and a good few others that I've worked with over the past couple of years, especially, who are the genuine healers of the world. And that's what I want to say. So everyone who's going through this right now, who's watching the show and other shows like this where Cathy is, or myself, interviewing other amazing overcomers, you guys are the real healers. You're the ones that are going to be there waiting for the other little kids to come out, for the other people to come out, holding their hand, saying, this is how you do it. Come, let me show you how. Not let me tell you how, let me show you how, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's another pearl of wisdom Mark had taught me was to turn the negative of my past into a positive that helps others and empowers others. And it's like, wow, that's a lot of shining to have to do, because that sure is some dark stuff I went through. So it's amazing how our life's experiences that we have can give us such an ability and a knowledge base to be able to overcome and be the healers, not only for ourselves, but for our whole world. The whole world is in a time of evolutionary healing right now, and we get to be part of that. Wow.
What an amazing time to be alive. I feel so blessed. I'm sitting on the sidelines here watching you guys do it. It's fan-freaking-tastic. I've got to tell you, it's fantastic. It is absolutely beautiful to see the strength, the courage, the camaraderie that you guys all have with each other. Yeah, it saddens me a lot sometimes when there's so much warring and fighting and accusations going on. But we also understand that is most certainly the cabal in action as well, with a lot of background stuff and, a lot of, I call them infiltrators as well. And it's about discernment, right? And, it's about it's about you knowing exactly in your heart. When you have the true essence of Christ in your heart, you know who's true and who's not true. And you have to take a risk to trust as well. And yes, you're not always going to trust the right people, but that's how you learn. And even if you do come across someone who's not trustworthy, you can always backtrack and then go forward again, recalibrate and go forward again. How did you know when you were healed? How did you feel that day? Did you just wake up one day and your cells were singing? Did you just wake up one day and just have a different feeling? How did you know that you were healed?
I think that it's such a journey, so there's so many different aspects of it. But I think when my brain started firing, where I regained conscious awareness, was the most pivotal moment of healing. And it was very, very unique for me in that all of a sudden I could feel again, because when people are sitting controlled without any conscious awareness, they lose their ability to even feel. That's why we see people who are, pierced up really bad, and and all. It's like they're saying, I can't feel. I don't even know who I am. I can't see myself. I can't feel myself. So it was that moment when I was able to feel again, and it was like almost a dimensional feel of like, whoa, wow, okay, I'm here. I feel my I feel the fabric in my jeans, and I feel the ground underneath my feet while I'm walking, and just a conscious awareness and appreciation of every single aspect of life around me. It's just like a overwhelming moment of gratitude that I've constantly maintained. I live in a state of gratitude all the time, just because of the miracle of that aspect of what can actually happen when our brains fire again and we have self-control again. What a beautiful, beautiful, beautiful thing that is.
I love what you said, because I think that again is the key, is to feel the gratitude. There is nothing more beautiful than feeling the gratitude for every abuse that has occurred. And I want to say, and I want to just be clear on this, it doesn't mean you're happy that it happened, but you are grateful, because you have so much gratitude that that situation has brought you to this place where you have this much empathy, this much compassion, this much ability to get someone else who's in such a traumatized state. Because most people, you know, especially if you've just studied psychology or psychiatry or healing or whatever it is on a mental level, you know, you can understand the theory of it. But, you know, when you really deal with someone who has been in the worst types of traumatic situations, you can completely identify with what that person's going through. And that is where I think it is so beautiful that to be grateful that you've come out of that situation and you're alive and the sun is shining and the birds are singing and you have your 10 fingers and your 10 toes and your beautiful body that is still able and functioning and strong and healthy, and you are an instrument for God. That for me is truly, I feel that. I've not been through what you guys have been through, but I feel that gratitude that God uses me as God's instrument. And you know, that for me is, when you're a healer, you know, that is the most beautiful feeling, I think, ever. What do you say, Cathy?
Absolutely. And it was also a real knowing that no matter what tortures my body went through, my spirit was always in a safe, loving space. My spirit was not damaged by what was imposed in this physical world. You know, it was always in a safe, loving space. I think sometimes people can relate to that concept when maybe a horrible traffic accident happens and they float above the accident, and they like a little light attaching to the body, and they get this overview. You know, we hear people talk about those kind of things, but that aspect of my spirit always being in a safe, loving space was a connection with the divine that happened throughout my victimization. It happened throughout my healing. It happens every moment of my life, because it's like, I was saying when we were talking earlier, that it's like my life is a prayer, because I stay in the constant of that. It's such a celebration, a gratitude, a joy, an infinite strength, so much love, and a pure gratitude celebration that my spirit was always safe. In that regard, I even feel like my childhood wasn't stolen from me because of the experience me had. Instead, children are so pure. They already have that spiritual connection to the divine. They already have the heightened senses, the joy, the love, the gratitude, the happiness. Look at their shining little faces. Then life starts getting in the way. They get structured. They got to do, you know, but they have that. And that's what we all have. We all still have that innocent child. We still have that connection to the divine, that purity, and we can embrace it anytime. And when we recognize it and start living that joy, wow, what an amazing way to live. And again, that's where we all connect. And that's where all the divisiveness and the negativity and nonsense all falls away. That is like an ultimate discernment and knowing that we're living life the way it was intended to be lived all along.
I fully agree with that. I think that is so true. You know, when you can go back to the little child within you, the inner child, and you can just feel the joy, the innocence, the truth. And as you said, to know that your spirit was always in that safe, loving place is so important, because as long as you have spirit, you have your body. And, you know, and that's why the body and the spirit obviously work completely together in a beautiful way. So, wow, I mean, that is just amazing. And your daughter, is she well? I know she was rescued with you. Is she happy? Is she well? I'm so glad that he rescued you, Mark rescued you and your daughter. That's just my closing question for you.
Yes, it's beautiful. And she's amazing, profound, loving being that clearly recognizes her life's purpose and lives gratitude every day too. So we share a lot of joy together in spite of what happened in our past. I think that, you know, really ultimately she and I are a shining example of the power of a mother's love and family unity that everyone really needs to reclaim, because what happens to us again is not who we are. And that family unit is so sacred and precious. It's something we need to reignite and embrace and realize. It's something she and I celebrate constantly now that we're free to. Yeah, she's absolutely phenomenal, and we both are extremely grateful to be alive and present to experience this pivotal moment in humanity's evolution as we have this spiritual awakening that's happening on a global scale.
Well, the mama like you, how can she not? I think that's really beautiful. Cathy, wow, it's been, I know we've just hit an hour now, and I want to just say to you, thank you so much. And I'm definitely inviting you back again. So I hope you will be open to coming back for some more chats with us in the future. But is there anything that you would like to just say in closing before we bid our viewers farewell?
I encourage everyone to look into my books, get the Audible version if you choose, or get the hard copy, pick up and go through the pages or whatever, and then research every fact for yourself, because the more you know, the more you see how absolutely inexcusable it is that we allow this dark cabal to meddle in our brilliant minds and lives anymore. We have all the power. We have all the love. This is our time. It's our time to shine.
Oh, yeah, I love that. And it sure is our time to shine. It's time to take back that everything that they've taken away, and let's transform it back into God's creative, beautiful light. You know, Jesus was the ultimate alchemist, and we will follow that example and use that and create the most beautiful alchemy on this planet, and turn all of those painful, horrific situations back into God's creative light. And we will be the example for our children and our grandchildren, and open and pave the way for everyone who is going to follow here onwards. So Cathy, I want to just say to you again, thank you so much. And I'm definitely having you back. So everyone is asking, no, I've had lots of messages over the past couple of weeks as well about, are you, and definitely she's coming back. So thank you so much.
For sure.
Thank you so much for joining me today. It's just so fantastic having conversations with you. I really, really enjoy it. And you are a beautiful, shining light for the world. And thank you for what you do and the courage it's taken you to get here. I have no doubt it has not always been an easy road, but here you are. And you are just a beacon of light for so many others. So thank you so much for that. And God bless you and everyone you love. Okay, everybody. I say thank you to each and every one of you for tuning in. Really appreciate you. And we will see you back tomorrow with Caleb. Okay. Take care, everybody. God bless. All the best, and have a fantastic weekend.